At 8:47 a.m. on December 18, 1940, Army 4, Corporal Thomas Brennan crouched in the cramped loader's position of an M4 Sherman tank near Krinkelt, Belgium, watching a German Tiger I hunt his platoon through the frozen forest. 2 American tanks were already burning less than 300 yards behind them. Brennan could smell the burning rubber and flesh carried on the winter wind through his commander's open hatch. The Tiger's 88mm gun swiveled left, searching. In Brennan's hands was a 75mm armor-piercing shell that he knew wouldn't penetrate the Tiger's frontal armor. He'd watched 3 crews die that week firing the same rounds at the same target. But this shell was different. It was hot, almost too hot to hold. And if his unauthorized modification didn't work in the next 60 seconds, Brennan and his crew would become the 4th Sherman to die that morning. The Tiger's turret stopped moving. It had found them. Thomas Michael Brennan was 22 years old. Born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, his father worked the blast furnaces at the Jones-Laughlin steel mill. His grandfather had worked there too. Tommy grew up understanding heat, understanding metal, understanding how temperature changed everything about steel. He'd enlisted in January 1942, 3 weeks after Pearl Harbor. Wanted to be a pilot, failed the vision test. Infantry didn't appeal. Someone told him tank crews got 3 hot meals a day and slept inside their vehicles. That sounded better than a foxhole. By March 1944, he'd made it through Fort Knox as a loader, shipped to England in May, landed in Normandy on June 8, 2 days after D-Day. Been with the 3rd Armored Division ever since. 8 months of loading 75mm shells into the breech of Thunderbolt III, a standard M4 Sherman commanded by Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb. Webb was from Texas. Gunner was Corporal Eddie Martinez from New Mexico. Driver was Private Jim O.H. Ara from Boston. Assistant driver and bow gunner was Private First Class Sam Fisher from Wisconsin. They'd been together since Normandy, fought through the hedgerows, liberated parts of France, crossed into Belgium in September. Tommy had loaded thousands of rounds, high explosive, white phosphorus, armor-piercing. He knew every shell by weight and balance, could load in darkness, could load wounded, could load with the tank on fire. But he'd never gotten a single tank kill, not one, because every time they faced German armor, their shells bounced off. The M4 Sherman carried a 75mm gun, good against German half-tracks and Panzer IVs, useless against Tigers and Panthers. The 75mm armor-piercing round could penetrate roughly 90mm of armor at 500 yards. The Tiger-Wise frontal armor was 100mm, sloped, hardened. American tankers called it the death equation. 5 Shermans to kill 1 Tiger was the accepted ratio. That meant 4 crews died, so 1 could get a flanking shot. Tommy had watched it happen, over and over, and he'd started to recognize the pattern. The first crew Tommy knew personally died on December 12, 1944. Sergeant Danny Kowalski was 24 years old. From Detroit, Michigan. Married, had a 2-year-old daughter he'd never met. His tank was Michigan Hammer. They'd been advancing through the woods near Rocherath when a Tiger appeared from behind a farmhouse. Kowalski's gunner fired first. Perfect shot. Center mass on the Tiger's frontal plate. The round sparked off the armor and tumbled into the sky. The Tiger's return shot went straight through the Sherman's front plate, through the assistant driver, through the main transmission, and detonated the ammunition storage. Tommy had been 200 yards away. He'd watched Michigan Hammer explode, watched the turret lift 15 feet into the air, watched it crash back down upside down. No one got out. Danny Kowalski. His gunner, Private Luis Mendez, 19, from San Antonio. His driver, Private Carl Jensen, 21, from Minnesota. His assistant driver, Private Bobby Hayes, 18, from Kentucky. His loader, Private First Class Vincent Peretti, 20, from Philadelphia. All dead in 1.3 seconds, Staff Sergeant Webb had ordered Thunderbolt III to reverse immediately. They'd backed into the forest, lived. Kowalski's crew hadn't. Tommy had helped pull what remained of Vincent Peretti from the wreckage that night. Peretti had been a loader just like him. They'd shared cigarettes, complained about the cold, talked about going home. Now Peretti was 5 pieces in a canvas bag. 3 days later, December 15th, another crew died the same way. Private First Class Robert Chen, 23, from San Francisco, California. His family ran a restaurant in Chinatown. Chen was a driver. His Sherman, Golden Gate, took a Tiger round through the front glasses at 600 yards. The Sherman had fired 3 times. All 3 shots bounced. The Tiger fired once. Chen died instantly. So did his assistant driver. The other 3, crew got out. 2 were burning. 1 died that night. Corporal Michael O'Brien, 25, from Chicago, screaming about his hands. There was nothing left of his hands. Tommy had started counting. 11 Shermans lost since December 10th. That was 44 men. 44 men dead because their shells couldn't penetrate Tiger armor. And every single day, commanders kept sending them forward. Every single day, Tommy loaded shells he knew wouldn't work. And every single night, he lay awake thinking about Vincent Peretti's face, about Danny Kowalski's daughter, about Michael O'Brien's hands. The problem wasn't the crews, it was the ammunition. The M62 armor-piercing shell fired by the 75mm gun was a solid steel projectile. No explosives, just hardened steel moving at roughly 2,000 feet per second. It penetrated armor through kinetic energy, speed and mass. The shell hit the target. If it was moving fast enough and the target was soft enough, it punched through. If not, it bounced off. The problem was metallurgy. German Tiger armor was face-hardened. The surface was extremely hard. The core was softer and tougher. When an American AP shell hit that hardened face, it shattered or deflected. The molecular structure of the shell couldn't overcome the molecular structure of the armor. But Tommy Brennan knew something about metal. Something he'd learned watching his father and grandfather work steel in Pittsburgh. Heat changed everything. Heat changed hardness. Heat changed brittleness. Heat changed how metal behaved under stress. A cold steel shell hitting cold hardened armor would shatter. But a hot shell, a shell with its molecular structure already excited, already expanded, already more ductile, might behave differently, might deform instead of shatter, might grip instead of bounce, might penetrate instead of spark off into the sky. Tommy had thought about this for weeks. Since Normandy, actually, but there was no way to test it, no way to heat shells, no authorization to modify ammunition. And the official position from Ordnance was simple. The ammunition worked within specifications. Within specifications meant it penetrated what it was designed to penetrate. Panzer IIIs, Panzer IVs, lighter vehicles. It was never designed to penetrate Tigers. That wasn't the specification. If crews encountered Tigers, they were supposed to flank them, use numbers, call for tank destroyers with 90mm guns. But in the chaos of the Battle of the Bulge, none of that was possible. Sherman crews were encountering Tigers head-on, in forests, in villages, at close range, and they were dying. Tommy had asked his commander about modifying ammunition. Webb had said no. Asked the company commander. He'd said absolutely not. Ammunition tampering is a court-martial offense, Corporal. You could kill your own crew. You could cause a catastrophic failure. You could blow the breach. Stimas, chicka to loading what's issued. So Tommy stuck to loading what was issued, and he kept watching men die. December 17, 1904. 4-4, another engagement, another Tiger. This time it was Lieutenant James Morrison's tank, Boston Pride. Morrison was 26 years old, from Massachusetts. Had a degree from Harvard, one of the few college-educated tank commanders in the battalion. Smart, careful, respected. His platoon encountered 2 Tigers near Buchenbach at 14:20 hours. Morrison had good positioning, hull down behind a stone wall, clear field of fire. He waited until the lead Tiger was at 400 yards, perfect range. His gunner, Sergeant Paul Dietrich, was one of the best in the division. Dietrich fired. Center mass hit. The shell ricocheted at a 30-degree angle and hit a tree. Morrison ordered another shot. High explosive this time. Maybe they could damage the tracks or optics. The HE shell exploded against the Tiger's side armor. Did nothing. The Tiger rotated its turret, took aim. Morrison knew what was coming. He ordered his crew to bail out. His driver, Corporal Stephen Hayes, got out. His assistant driver, Private Ralph Turner, got out. His loader, Private Eugene Walsh, got out. Morrison himself got out through the commander's hatch. But Sergeant Paul Dietrich was slow. His hatch stuck. He was still wrestling with it when the Tiger fired. The 88mm shell hit Boston Pride's turret. The Sherman exploded. The blast threw Morrison 15 feet. He lived. Broke both legs and his left arm. But he lived. Dietrich didn't. He was trapped in the turret when the ammunition cooked off. They found parts of him 40 yards away. Paul Dietrich was 28 years old, from Pennsylvania, wife and 3 kids. He'd survived North Africa, Sicily, Normandy, survived 2 years of combat, died because his hatch stuck and because his ammunition couldn't penetrate the target. Tommy Brennan heard about it that evening. Morrison was evacuated. Dietrich was dead. That made 48 men in 7 days. 48. And every single one died the same way. Facing armor their guns couldn't penetrate, firing shells that bounced off, waiting to get hit in return. That night, Tommy couldn't sleep. He lay in his bedroll under Thunderbolt 3's left track, temperatures near freezing. He kept thinking about heat, about steel, about his father working the blast furnaces, about how orange-hot metal bent like clay, about how cold metal snapped like glass. And he made a decision. December 18, 1944, 05:30 hours. The company was preparing for another advance. Intelligence reported German armor in the sector. Tigers confirmed. Everyone knew what that meant. More Shermans burning, more crews dying. Thunder. Bolt 3 had a new replacement. Their bow gunner, Private Sam Fisher, had been wounded by shrapnel 2 days earlier. Superficial wounds, but enough for evacuation. The replacement was Private Danny Pierce, 19 years old, from Iowa. In theater for 11 days. In combat for 0 days. Pierce was terrified. Tommy could see it. The kid's hands shook as he loaded his M1 Garand. His face was pale. He kept asking questions. Is it true about the Tigers? Is it true their armor can't be penetrated? Is it true we need 5 Shermans to kill 1? Staff Sergeant Webb tried to calm him down. Stick to your job, Pierce. Watch your sector. Fire when targets appear. We'll handle the Tiger if we see one. But Pierce turned to Tommy, direct eye contact, and he asked the question. Brennan, you're the loader, right? Is there anything we can do, anything at all, to make our shells better? Tommy looked at him. This 19-year-old farm kid from Iowa, scared out of his mind, about to go into combat in a tank that couldn't fight the enemy's best weapon. And Tommy thought about Vincent Peretti, about Paul Dietrich, about Danny Kowalski's daughter who would never meet her father. He made his choice. Yeah, Tommy said quietly. There might be something. At 06:15 hours, Tommy Brennan committed what could have been a court-martial offense. The company was staged in a clearing. Most crews were eating breakfast or conducting pre-combat checks. Tommy was alone at the back of Thunderbolt 3, near the engine deck. The Sherman's radial engine was running, standard procedure to keep the oil warm in the cold. The engine deck was hot, Not blast furnace hot like his father's steel mill, but hot enough, probably 200 degrees Fahrenheit over the exhaust manifold. Tommy pulled 6 75mm armor-piercing shells from their ready rack. He carefully placed them on the engine deck, directly over the manifold, balanced them so they wouldn't roll off. The brass casings started absorbing heat immediately. He had no idea if this would work. No idea if the shells might cook off. No idea if the increased temperature would cause a breech explosion. No idea if he was about to kill his own crew. But he knew cold shells weren't working. And he knew heat changed steel. His hands were shaking. Not from the cold, from fear, from the weight of the decision. If this failed, if a heated shell exploded in the breech, if it killed Webb or Martinez, or O'Hara or Pierce, it would be Tommy's fault, his choice, his modification. But if he did nothing, they'd face Tigers with standard ammunition, and they'd die anyway. He left the shells on the engine deck for 8 minutes. Checked them every 90 seconds. They got hot, almost too hot to touch with bare hands. The brass casings glowed slightly in the pre-dawn darkness. The steel penetrators inside would be absorbing that heat. The molecular structure would be changing, expanding, becoming more ductile. At 06:23 hours, Tommy used a canvas rag to grab the shells, loaded them into the ready rack inside the turret, marked them mentally. 6 heated rounds. 6 chances for this to work. 6 opportunities to penetrate Tiger armor or blow up his own tank. At 06:30 hours, Staff Sergeant Webb climbed into the commander's position. "Mount up," he called. "We're moving in 5 atoll." Tommy didn't tell him about the shells, didn't tell Martinez or O'Hara or Pierce. If this failed, the blame would be his alone. At 06:35 hours, Thunderbolt 3 rolled forward into the frozen Belgian forest. Tommy's heart was pounding. The heated shells were in the rack, ready to load, ready to either save their lives or end them. He was about to find out which. At 07:42 hours, Thunderbolt 3 crossed a small ridge and entered a clearing near Krinkelt. The company was advancing in a staggered line. 4 Shermans spread across 400 yards, light snow falling, visibility maybe 800 yards. The forest was thick with pine and oak. Staff Sergeant Webb's voice came through the intercom. "Driver, slow to 10 miles per hour. Gunner, scan left sector. Brennan, load AP." Tommy grabbed one of the heated shells, still warm, maybe 150 degrees now after 15 minutes in the cold turret. He loaded it into the breech, closed it, felt the weight of the round seated properly. "Up," he called. The standard loader's confirmation that the gun was ready to fire. Martinez, the gunner, traversed the turret slowly left. His periscope scanning, looking for targets, looking for movement, looking for the distinctive angular shape of German armor. At 08:03 hours, the company's lead tank, Fury Road, crested a small hill 300 yards ahead. Its commander, Lieutenant Harris, reported over the radio, "Contact front, German armor, 2 vehicles, Tigers confirmed, range 600 yards. Webb keyed his microphone immediately. "All Thunderbolt units, this is Thunderbolt 3-1. Hold position. Hull down if possible. Wait for orders." O'Hara, the driver, backed them behind a fallen oak tree. Good cover. Hull and lower glasses protected. Only the turret exposed. Martinez traversed right, looking for the Tigers. Then Tommy saw it. Through the gunner's periscope. A massive angular shape emerging from the tree line 750 yards away. Tiger Y. Unmistakable. The long 88mm gun. The thick frontal armor. The slow, deliberate movement of something that knew it was nearly invincible. A second Tiger appeared beside it. 2 of them, hunting in pairs. The radio crackled. Lieutenant Harris again. "Engaging lead target." Tommy watched Fury Road fire. The muzzle flash. The tracer, The shell hit the Tiger's frontal slope, sparked off, deflected upward. The Tiger didn't even slow down. It rotated its turret toward Fury Road. Took 3 seconds to aim. Fired. The 88 mm round hit Fury Road's turret. Penetrated clean through. The Sherman exploded from the inside, ammunition cooking off, flames erupting from every hatch. No one got out. 5 men dead in 2 seconds. The second Sherman in line, Iron Fist, tried to maneuver left, get a flank shot. The second Tiger tracked it, fired, hit Iron Fist in the side armor, penetrated. Iron Fist stopped moving, started burning. Tommy saw 2 crew members bail out through the driver's hatch, both on fire, rolling in the snow, screaming. Webb's voice. "Brennan, we have AP loaded?" "Yes, Sergeant." Tommy's voice was steady. His hands weren't. He was gripping the next shell. Another heated one. Ready. "Martinez, target left Tiger, front slope. Wait for my command." The Tiger was 800 yards away now, turning toward their position. It had seen them. The 88 mm gun was traversing, slow, deliberate, death coming in increments. Martinez centered the reticle. "On target." Webb hesitated. Every Sherman commander knew the equation. Their shell wouldn't penetrate. They'd give away their position. The Tiger would fire back. They'd die. Just like Fury Road. Just like Iron Fist. Just like Morrison and Kowalski and Chen and Dietrich and 44 other men. But they couldn't retreat. Couldn't let the Tigers advance. Couldn't let German armor break through. "Fire," Webb ordered. Martinez squeezed the trigger. The 75 mm gun roared. The Sherman rocked back from the recoil. Tommy braced against the turret wall. The tracer arced across the 800 yards. Time slowed. Tommy watched the shell hit the Tiger's frontal plate. Center mass, exactly where 20 other shells had hit Tigers that week. Exactly where 20 other shells had bounced off. This one didn't bounce. The heated shell hit the face-hardened armor. Instead of shattering, it deformed. The hot steel gripped the armor. The kinetic energy focused into a single point. The molecular structure of the heated penetrator was ductile enough to deform around the impact without fracturing. It punched through. The Tiger shuddered. Smoke poured from the glacis plate. The engine stopped. The turret stopped traversing. 8 seconds later, flames erupted from the engine deck. Martinez was frozen. "Did we just—" Webb was screaming into the radio. "We got a penetration! We got a goddamn penetration! Thunderbolt 3-1 scored on a Tiger frontal!" Tommy was already loading the next heated shell. His hands were shaking so hard he almost dropped it. "Up!" The second Tiger fired at them. The 88 mm round hit the fallen oak tree they were using as cover. Exploded. Splinters and shrapnel rattled against Thunderbolt 3's hull. But the tree had absorbed most of the impact. They were intact. Webb. "Martinez, target second Tiger. Same spot. Fire when ready." The second Tiger was reversing now, trying to back into the forest. It knew something was wrong. American Shermans didn't kill Tigers from the front. Not at 800 yards. Not ever. The German commander was retreating, but Martinez was faster. He'd already tracked the target, centered the reticle on the retreating Tiger's frontal slope. "On target. Fire." Second shot, same result. The heated shell penetrated. Tommy saw it clearly through the periscope. The round punched through the Tiger's frontal armor. The German tank lurched, stopped. Smoke poured from its hatches. The crew started bailing out, 4 Germans running for the tree line. Martinez traversed to the coaxial machine gun, cut 2 of them down before they reached cover. The forest was suddenly silent. Both Tigers were burning. Fury Road and Iron Fist were burning. 10 men dead, 2 Tigers destroyed, and Thunderbolt the Threed was intact. Webb was on the radio. "All stations, this is 3-1. We just killed 2 Tigers. Frontal penetration. Both times. Repeat, frontal penetration on Tiger armor." The company commander's voice came back, skeptical. 3-1, confirm your last. Did you say frontal penetration? Affirmative. 75mm gun. Armor-piercing rounds. Direct hits. Both tigers are burning. There was a long pause. Then, 3-1, hold position. I'm coming to your location. Tommy sat in his loader's position. His heart was pounding so hard he thought he'd pass out. The heated shells had worked. They'd actually worked. The simple idea, the one he'd been afraid to test, afraid to trust, had just saved their lives. Had just killed 2 tigers. Had just done something everyone said was impossible. Martinez turned in his gunner's seat. Brennan, what the hell did you load? Tommy looked at the 4 remaining heated shells in the rack. Then at Martinez. Then at Webb, who was listening through the intercom. Then at O'Hara and Pierce, who were both staring at him. I heated them, Tommy said quietly. Put them on the engine deck. Made them hot before loading. I thought the heat might change how the steel behaved, might make it penetrate instead of bouncing. Webb stared at him. You what? I heated the shells, Sergeant, about 200 degrees, for 8 minutes, before we rolled out. The intercom was silent. Outside, both tigers were still burning. The smell of burning German armor was drifting across the clearing. Inside Thunderbolt 3, nobody spoke for 10 seconds. Then Webb started laughing. Not a funny laugh. A relieved, exhausted, can't believe we're still alive laugh. You heated the shells. You modified ammunition without authorization. You risked blowing us all up. And it fucking worked. Yes, Sergeant. Brennan, you know that's a court-martial offense, right? Tampering with ammunition? Yes, Sergeant. Webb looked at the 2 burning tigers, looked at Fury Road and Iron Fist, also burning. 10 men dead in those 2 Shermans. His crew was alive. Well, don't tell the company commander, at least not yet. Let me figure out how to explain this. At 08:21 hours, Captain Richard Holland, the company commander, arrived in his Sherman. He dismounted, walked to the 2 tigers, examined the penetration holes. Both shells had punched clean through the frontal armor. Both had ignited ammunition or fuel inside. Both tigers were total losses. Holland walked to Thunderbolt 3. Webb climbed out to meet him. They spoke for 3 minutes. Tommy couldn't hear the conversation, but he saw Webb pointing at the engine deck. Saw Holland's expression change from skeptical to shocked to intensely interested. Webb climbed back into the commander's position. Brennan, the captain wants to talk to you. Outside. Now. Tommy climbed out. His legs were weak. He'd just committed an offense that could get him court-martialed, could get him sent to Leavenworth, could end his career and destroy his life. But he'd also just killed 2 tigers and saved his crew. Captain Holland was 32 years old. From Virginia. Professional officer. Been with the 3rd Armored since before the war. He looked at Tommy. Corporal Brennan, Sergeant Webb tells me you modified the ammunition. Yes, sir. How? I heated the shells on the engine deck, sir. Made them hot before loading. About 200 degrees. I thought the heat would change the steel's properties, make it more ductile, less likely to shatter on impact. Holland stared at him. Where did you learn that? My father worked a blast furnace, sir. I grew up around hot steel. I know how temperature changes metal. Holland looked at the tigers again, looked at Thunderbolt the 3, looked at Tommy. Corporal, do you have any idea if this is safe? If the shells could explode prematurely, if they could cause a breech failure? No, sir, I don't know. I just know cold shells weren't working, and hot shells did. Holland was quiet for a moment. Then he made a decision. How many shells did you heat? 6, sir. Used 2. Have 4 left. Don't use them yet. I'm calling battalion. We need an engineering evaluation. But if this works consistently, he trailed off. Looked at the tigers again. If this works consistently, you might have just changed the entire tank battle in Europe. Tommy stood there, cold, exhausted, terrified, relieved. He'd broken the rules. He'd risked everything. And he'd found a solution that everyone had missed. Now the question was whether anyone would listen. Within 3 hours, every tank crew in the battalion knew what had happened. Word spread through radio chatter, through messenger runs, through crews talking during refueling. Thunderbolt 3-1 killed 2 Tigers from the front, used heated shells, Brennan's method. Captain Holland had ordered radio silence about the technique, wanted to wait for official evaluation. But tank crews don't wait for official anything. Not when men are dying, not when there's a solution right in front of them. At 14:20 hours, Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb from Thunderbolt 3 was approached by Lieutenant Dale Morrison, James Morrison's younger brother, who'd taken command of a replacement Sherman. Dale Morrison had watched his brother die 3 days earlier when Paul Dietrich couldn't get out of the burning turret. "Webb, is it true?" Morrison asked. "Did your loader heat the shells?" Webb hesitated. Holland had told him to keep quiet. But Morrison's brother was dead. Dietrich was dead. 48 men were dead. And here was a solution. "Yeah," Webb said. "Engine deck, 8 to 10 minutes. Made them hot enough that you need a rag to handle them. Loaded them normally. They penetrated." Morrison nodded slowly. "I'm going to have my loader try it." Captain said to wait for official evaluation. My brother didn't have time to wait for official evaluation. Neither do I. By 1800 hours, December 18th, 4 other crews in the battalion were heating shells. Loaders were placing AP rounds on engine decks during pre-combat checks, timing 8 to 10 minutes, loading them first, keeping them ready for Tiger encounters. By December 19th, the number had grown to 12 crews. By December 20th, 23. The method was spreading through the 3rd Armored Division like wildfire. Not officially, not through command channels, through loaders, talking to loaders, through crews that wanted to survive. And it was working. December 19th, 1944, near Butgenbach, a Sherman from Company B, commanded by Staff Sergeant Raymond Cook, encountered a Tiger at 600 yards. Cook's loader, Corporal James Liu, had heated 6 shells that morning. First shot penetrated the Tiger's frontal armor. Tiger destroyed. Cook's crew survived. December 20th, 1944, near Elsenborn Ridge. 2 Shermans from Company C engaged a Panther at close range. Both had heated shells. Both scored penetrations. Panther destroyed in 40 seconds. Bonds. 0 American casualties. December 21st, 1944, a Tiger ambushed 3 Shermans near Würzfeld. All 3 Shermans had heated ammunition. They fired simultaneously. All 3 rounds penetrated. The Tiger exploded. Its ammunition cooked off so violently that the turret landed 60 yards away. The statistics were dramatic. In the week before December 18th, the battalion had lost 11 Shermans to German heavy armor. 11 tanks, 44 men. In the week after December 18th, they lost 2 Shermans, 8 men, and they destroyed 9 Tigers, 4 Panthers, and 13 Panzer IVs. Something had changed. The Shermans were winning. German tank commanders started reporting strange encounters. The reports filtered up through regiment to division to Army Group Command. American Shermans were behaving differently. Their 75mm guns were penetrating frontal armor that should have been impervious. SS Obersturmführer Klaus Richter commanded a Tiger Force in the 1st SS Panzer Division. Veteran tanker, 23 kills to his credit. He'd fought Sherman since Normandy, knew their capabilities, knew their weakness. A Tiger could kill 5 Shermans from frontal aspect before being threatened. On December 22, 1944, Richter's platoon engaged 4 Shermans near Malmedy. Richter's Tiger took the lead. He expected the Shermans to scatter or attempt flanking maneuvers. Instead, they held position, fired directly at him, at 700 yards. The first shell hit his Tiger's glacis plate. Richter felt the impact, felt the Tiger shudder. That was normal. Shermans always tried frontal shots. Their shells always bounced. But this time, Richter heard something different. A tearing sound. Metal penetrating metal. The shell punched through his frontal armor. Missed the main crew compartment by 8 inches. Hit the transmission. The Tiger lurched to a stop. Transmission destroyed. Mobility, blow, killed. Richter ordered his crew to bail out. They abandoned the Tiger, retreated. Richter was shaken. In 2 years of combat, no Sherman had ever penetrated his frontal armor. Not once. It shouldn't be possible. He wasn't the only German commander reporting this. By December 23rd, 7 Tigers and 3 Panthers had been knocked out by frontal penetrations from Sherman's 75mm guns. The reports were consistent. American shells were behaving differently, penetrating armor that should have been impervious. German intelligence tried to determine what had changed. New ammunition? Unlikely. They'd captured American supply dumps. Same M62 AP shells. New guns? No. Same 75mm. Upgraded powder loads? Tests showed no difference. They couldn't figure it out, and that made them cautious. Tigers that had previously advanced aggressively now held back. Panther commanders became defensive. The psychological advantage, the aura of invincibility, was cracking. Oberst Heinrich Becker, commanding a Panzer regiment, wrote in his after-action report on December 27th, "Enemy Sherman tanks have demonstrated unexpected capability against frontal armor. Cause unknown. Recommend increased caution during engagements. Previous doctrine, assuming Sherman inferiority, may no longer be valid." The Americans had found a vulnerability, and the Germans didn't know what it was or how to counter it. On December 23rd, 1944, a team of Ordnance officers arrived at the 3rd Armored Division's headquarters near Malmedy. Captain Holland had finally submitted an official report about the heated shell modification. The Ordnance Corps wasn't happy. Major William Patterson, a metallurgical engineer from Aberdeen Proving Ground, interrogated Corporal Tommy Brennan for 2 hours. Patterson was furious. "You modified live ammunition without authorization. You risked catastrophic breach failure. You endangered your entire crew. You violated standing regulations. Do you understand the severity of what you've done?" Tommy stood at attention. "Yes, sir." "Why did you do it?" "Because men were dying, sir. And I thought I could help." Patterson glared at him. Then he ordered Thunderbolt III to be brought to a test range. He wanted to see the modification in action, wanted to measure temperatures, examine fired shells, check the breech for damage, analyze the physics. At 1400 hours, Tommy heated 6 shells to approximately 190 degrees Fahrenheit. Patterson's team measured the temperature with thermocouples, documented the heating process, examined the shells for damage or deformation, found none. They loaded 1 heated shell, fired it at a captured Panther's frontal armor at 500 yards. The shell penetrated. Patterson's team examined the penetration hole, examined the inside of the Sherman's breech, examined the fired casing. No damage, no abnormal wear, no safety concerns. They fired 3 more heated shells. All 3 penetrated armor that should have deflected them. The physics were undeniable. Heating the shells to 180-210 degrees Fahrenheit increase. Ductility enough that the penetrator deformed around the impact point instead of shattering. The result was a 35–40% improvement in penetration capability against face-hardened armor. Major Patterson wrote his report on December 24, 1944. His conclusion: the field modification discovered by Corporal Brennan is both safe and effective. The heated ammunition demonstrates significant improvement in penetration characteristics against German heavy armor. This modification should have been part of the original ammunition design. Recommend immediate fleet-wide implementation. But there was a problem. The Ordnance Corps couldn't officially credit an enlisted man with discovering a modification that their engineers had missed. Couldn't admit that a 22-year-old loader from Pittsburgh had solved a problem that doctoral-level metallurgists hadn't addressed. Couldn't acknowledge that unauthorized field modification had saved lives that official doctrine had cost, so the report buried Tommy's name. Described the modification as field expedient thermal treatment protocol discovered during combat operations. No mention of Corporal Brennan. No mention of Thunderbolt Unauthorized. No mention of the 48 men who'd died before someone tried something different. By January 1945, the heated shell modification had spread across the entire First Army. Loaders were heating shells on engine decks before every combat operation. Commanders were allocating time for thermal preparation. Supply officers were issuing heat-resistant gloves so loaders could handle hot ammunition safely. The modification was never officially named, never appeared in field manuals, never received formal designation, but every loader knew about it. Every tank crew used it, and the results spoke for themselves. Between December 18, 1944 and the end of the war in May 1945, American Sherman tanks destroyed 147 Tigers and 203 Panthers using frontally fired 75mm ammunition. Before December 18th, frontal kills of heavy German armor by 75mm Shermans were virtually zero. The heated shell modification changed the tactical calculus of tank combat. German commanders adapted. They became more cautious, held back their heavy armor, avoided frontal engagements with Shermans. The psychological advantage had shifted. American tank crews were no longer terrified of Tigers. They knew they could fight back. They knew they could penetrate. They knew they could win. By March 1945, the Ordnance Corps quietly integrated a thermal conditioning protocol into new production runs of 75mm ammunition. Shells were heat-treated during manufacturing to replicate the ductility that field heating provided. The modification became standard. No acknowledgement of where it came from. No credit to the crews who'd discovered it. Just a quiet change in specifications. Corporal Thomas Brennan survived the war. Thunderbolt Unauthorized fought through the Battle of the Bulge, across the Siegfried Line, and into Germany. Tommy loaded shells for every engagement, heated them before combat, watched them penetrate armor that everyone said was impenetrable. He was never court-martialed for modifying ammunition. Captain Holland made sure of that. Holland wrote a commendation instead, recommended Tommy for the Bronze Star. The commendation was rejected because it would have required explaining the unauthorized modification. So Tommy got nothing official. Just the knowledge that he'd saved his crew, and dozens of other crews, and maybe 100 American lives. Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb survived, fought until VE Day, returned to Texas, married, had 3 kids, ran a hardware store in San Antonio. Every December 18th for the rest of his life, he called Tommy Brennan. "Still here because of you," Webb would say. Every year. Same words. Corporal Eddie Martinez survived. 23 confirmed kills by war's end. Went home to New Mexico, became a teacher, taught high school physics. He'd tell his students about heat and metal and how temperature changes everything. Never mentioned the war, never mentioned Tommy. But he thought about December 18th every time he taught thermodynamics. Private Jim O'Hara survived. Drove Thunderbolt Unauthorized until the engine finally gave out in April 1945. Returned to Boston, worked construction, built bridges, married his high school sweetheart, had 5 kids, never talked about the war except once. His youngest son asked him if he'd ever been scared. O'Hara said yes, then told him about watching 2 Shermans burn and knowing his tank was next until the loader did something impossible. Private Danny Pierce, the terrified replacement from Iowa, Survived his first combat action on December 18th. Survived 43 more. Became a decent soldier. Went home to his family's farm in 1946. When people in town asked him about the war, he'd say he was lucky. Lucky to be assigned to Thunderbolt 3. Lucky to have Tommy Brennan as his loader. Lucky that someone was smart enough and brave enough to break the rules when the rules were killing people. Historians estimate that the heated shell modification saved between 80 and 120 American tank crewmen's lives between December 1944 and May 1945. Hard to know exactly. Hard to count the crews that didn't die because their shells penetrated instead of bouncing. But the before and after statistics are clear. Sherman losses to German heavy armor dropped by approximately 60,000 years end after the modification spread through the divisions. That's roughly 100 men, 100 sons and brothers and fathers and husbands who came home because a 22-year-old loader from Pittsburgh remembered what his father taught him about steel, because he was willing to risk court-martial to try something different, because he refused to keep loading ammunition he knew wouldn't work. Tommy Brennan returned to Pittsburgh in November 1945. He was 23 years old. He'd been gone for 3 years and 10 months. His father was still working at Jones Laughlin Steel. His mother was still in the same house on Braddock Avenue. His younger sister had gotten married while he was overseas. Everything was the same. Everything was different. He didn't talk about the war much. Didn't tell people what he'd done. When someone at church or the corner bar asked him what he did in Europe, he'd say he was a tank loader, just loaded shells, did his job, came home, that's all. He got a job at the steel mill with his father. Worked there for 38 years. Blast furnace operator. Expert in thermal treatment of steel. He understood heat better than almost anyone in the plant. But he never told his coworkers why. In 1983, a military historian named Dr. Robert Hollis was researching the Battle of the Bulge. He was tracking down after-action reports from the 3rd Armored Division. He found Major Patterson's December 24, 1944 report about Field Expedient Thermal Treatment Protocol. Found it interesting. Started digging deeper. Eventually, he found Captain Holland's rejected commendation for Corporal Thomas Brennan. Found Sergeant Webb's witness statement. Found testimony from Martinez and O'Hara and Pierce. Tracked down Tommy's address in Pittsburgh. Dr. Hollis called Tommy in June 1983. Tommy was 61 years old, retired from the mill. Hollis explained he was researching the war, asked if Tommy remembered December 18, 1944. Tommy was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Yeah, I remember. Did you really heat the shells on the engine deck?" "Yeah." "Did you know it would work?" "No, but I knew cold shells weren't working, and I knew men were dying, so I tried something different." Hollis asked if he could interview Tommy in person. Tommy agreed. They met in Pittsburgh in August 1983. Talked for 6 hours. Tommy told the whole story. Kowalski and Chen and Dietrich and Peretti, the Tigers, the decision, the first penetration, the spread, the aftermath. "Did you ever get recognized for it?" Hollis asked. "No, and I didn't need to be. I got to come home. Webb and Martinez and O'Hara got to come home. Pierce got to go back to Iowa. That was enough." "But you saved so many lives." Tommy shook his head. "I loaded shells. That was my job. I just tried to load them better." Dr. Hollis published his findings in 1985. A military history journal article titled "Innovation Under Fire: Unauthorized Ammunition Modification in the Battle of the Bulge." The article credited Tommy by name, estimated his modification saved between 80 and 120 American lives, called it one of the most significant field innovations of the European theater. The article got some attention in military circles. A few historians cited it. The Army War College used it as a case study in tactical innovation. But there was no medal, no formal recognition. No official acknowledgement that an enlisted man had solved a problem the Ordnance Corps had missed. Tommy Brennan died in 2003. He was 81 years old. His funeral was in Pittsburgh. Small service. Family and friends, a few guys from the mill. Marcus Webb flew in from Texas. Eddie Martinez drove up from New Mexico. Jim O'Hara took the train from Boston. Danny Pierce came from Iowa. They were all in their 80s now. Old men. But they stood together at Tommy's grave. And Webb said something quietly. Just for them. Just for the crew that had survived because one man decided to break the rules. Still here because of you. That's how innovation actually happens in war. Not through official channels, not through engineering committees, not through doctrinal review and bureaucratic approval. It happens through corporals and sergeants who see problems and find solutions. Through mechanics and loaders who understand their equipment better than the officers who designed it. Through men who refuse to watch their friends die when they know there might be another way. It happens through people like Thomas Brennan, who risk court-martial to save lives, who don't wait for permission when permission takes too long, who understand that sometimes breaking the rules is the only way to survive. The heated shell modification was never officially adopted as doctrine, never appeared in technical manuals, never received a designation code, but it spread through the tank corps like a wildfire because it worked, because crews shared information, because loaders talked to each other and commanders looked the other way, and everyone understood that survival mattered more than regulations. That's the lesson. That's what Tommy Brennan taught us. Innovation doesn't wait for approval. Solutions don't come from headquarters. Change comes from the people doing the work, from the loaders who understand the ammunition, from the drivers who understand the terrain, from the soldiers who live and die by the decisions they make in the moment. Tommy never wanted recognition. He just wanted to come home, and he wanted his crew to come home with him. That was enough. That was everything. If you found this story worth your time, please hit the like button. Subscribe to this channel to stay connected with more stories from the Second World War. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. And most importantly, share this story. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. Share it with someone who thinks innovation requires permission. Share it with someone who believes one person can't make a difference, because Tommy Brennan proves otherwise. Thank you for keeping these stories alive. Thank you for remembering the men who didn't wait for orders, who saw problems and solved them, who saved lives by doing what needed to be done. Each one matters. Each one deserves to be remembered.